Something must be done. I might take a slight difference with that. I don't think it's something. I think it's some things, because this is a very complex and multi-layered situation resulting in the deaths and the rapes and the robberies and the things that threaten us. I read as well an editorial in one of our daily newspapers saying that we, national security, need to take emergency measures. I'll tell you this, I have always had very clean ears and a very open mind and a very open spirit to all suggestions from all stakeholders. Actually, I get emails, I get letters. As I told you, I look on social media as a participant myself, and I'm very, very open to ideas. So I want to say, through you, the media, to the business community, to the faith-based organizations, to the NGOs, and many of them have approached me since I'm at this desk, and many times before, with different plans and proposals, all of them I could see or glean heading towards making us a safer and a better place to live in and to work in. But I remain very committed, very open, particularly to the business community that has in the past reached out. I can tell you, just a few months ago, since coming to this office, I invited the business community who wrote to me about some of their problems in the city of Port of Spain, Doma in particular. I invited Doma, the head of the municipal police in the city of Port of Spain, a certain senior superintendent Charles, the then commissioner of police. This was before Mr. Jacobs, immediately before Mr. Jacobs' arrival at this juncture, at this job, and a number of other senior law enforcement personnel. And Doma brought along a full cadre of its representatives led by its president. And we discussed a microcosm of Trinidad and Tobago's problems as it related to the city of Port of Spain. It was a discussion about Trinidad and Tobago, but as it related to Port of Spain. Pickpockets, threatening of their customers, chasing customers away from the city. People don't want to go. The Port of Spain city is dying. Break-ins in stores, nighttime entry through roofs, and as I say, store break-in and larceny, and all manners of things. We addressed those issues. When I invited them to that meeting, that is Doma, a subsection of the business environment in Trinidad and Tobago, I didn't bring them to this office. I took us to the NCC's headquarters at the Queen's Park, Savannah. And I took them there because prior to that, in 2018, I was at the grandstand at Carnival Sunday night when information came to law enforcement that there were those in this society who were planning to carry out a terrorist event at the Queen's Park, Savannah on the Marsh Gras Sunday night. Well, the Marsh Gras. And it was thwarted because we got, in collaborating with our international partners, sufficient information that caused us to act and to thwart that event. And while that was all happening, I was to go into the NCC's command center at the Queen's Park, Savannah. And I saw, not for the first time I must admit, a very effective CCTV operation where they, with the responsibility for the Savannah and environs, had sight of every square inch almost of it, and where they could see from a very vantage point everything that was happening around that place. And therefore I took Doma there and showed them that apparatus and encouraged Doma to see whether it could replicate something like that for DOMA in the city of Port of Spain, and hoping that we could replicate that in Arima and Chaguanas and San Fernando and everywhere in our major city centers. And we also did that with an understanding that they would tap that feed into the National Police Command Center, so the police too could see what they at the local center would see, and the responses could be a lot more efficient to deal with the threat. In addition to that, we instituted a number of patrols, increased them, because they always had patrols in Trinidad, but we intensified them using the soldiers and the police and the municipal police. And I got, for the next couple of months after that, direct personal reports from the business community and from Mr. Aboud of DOMA that he in fact had seen, and they had in fact seen, increased and intense patrols in the city, and things had started to become quiet again. So that I suppose there is a formula. There's much more that could be done, and we should be doing it. And of course, there are things that the business community and individuals in the society could and must do to protect ourselves as first defenders of our person, our homes, our businesses, our motor cars, our property. So when I say whole of government, because I understand that education, or the lack of it for our children, contribute to this complex problem. I understand what complicity and criminality on the part of public officials contribute to this problem. Only a week and a half ago, Mr. Justice Rahim in the court identified collaboration between a public officer in a state company and a private firm to steal taxpayers' money. So you members of the media, you Trinidad and Tobago, have seen in many occasions, and you know because you report to us, about complicity and criminality and illegality on the part of public officers. No, and all, not just public officers, many citizens in Trinidad and Tobago, because I just gave you an example of private sector too. And there are many, many more I can give. So it's a very complex problem. But we will not shirk from our responsibility. We know what they are. I know what the Constitution demands of me. I've sworn to it, and I will live by it. Sometimes at the risk of becoming very hated and unpopular too. But that is par for the course. I tell you what, I have been in regular meetings and contact, and that, ladies and gentlemen, literally means Easter Sunday morning, Easter Monday morning, Saturday and Sunday, last weekend, every one of those 2 days, and the long weekend before that, every one of those 3 days, I was at this location, meeting either with the Commissioner of Prison, Commissioner of Police, Chief of Defense Staff, head of some one of the agencies, my permanent secretary, who is in this room with us today, organizing affairs, doing what we have to do in this fight. And we will not shirk from our responsibility. We will do it. With those things said, I would like to invite the Commissioner of Prisons, because the information that is available to me suggests that a large number of these murders emanate from behind the prison walls. That is after the police investigate matters, arrest persons, charge them, take them to court, and the court in its wisdom place them in custody either on bail, yet to conditions to be met for their release on bail, or without bail. And there are some offenses in this country up to now. Well, even capital offense of murder is now, according to the courts, a bailable offense. And those matters are being worked through. But a lot of the murders that take place come from behind prison walls. There are those who, after the police do their work and deposit them with the prison for safekeeping, to keep them away from the communities so that they wouldn't continue to perpetrate harm and bloodshed and murder and rape and mayhem. They believe they don't want to stay there. And unfortunately, there are those who may not fully understand that and provide succor and support. But all we do is live by the law and live by the Constitution. And there are prison officers who, by virtue of the oath they have taken and their own personal morality and integrity and the regulations of the prison service and the police service, who take the position, we will not be a part of that. We will not comply with that. We will uphold the law and the Constitution and the tenets of our duty. And there are cases where those prison officers have come under threat and have paid with their lives. Every single day since it happened, I look at this as I go into my office. This is a prison officer by the name of Jones. May his soul rest in peace. May his family be comforted. You will remember on that day in Siparia, when he was there with his daughter doing the things that all fathers ought to do. And you will remember the reaction of that child when the shots ran out and she saw her father fall. Criminality of the highest extreme. And that's because Jones, from all the information I got from the prison and the police, was one of those officers who took the position. He will do what he's supposed to do. He wouldn't be complicitous. He wouldn't let us down. He wouldn't let you down, Trinidad and Tobago. He'd be true to his ethics and true to his oath. And there are a lot of people in this country who pretend to be true to theirs and appear to get away lightly. So far. And then there was Officer Serret. And all the intelligence that comes to me suggests, as I told you twice a while ago, some of it comes from behind bars. So there's a direct correlation between what is happening in the prison and some of what is happening on the outside. So before I ask Mr. Jacob to tell us what he and the police organization has been doing and must continue to do to push back the criminals as they create the trauma that they are causing, I would like to invite the prison commissioner to address us on some of those issues. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. Good afternoon, especially to the law enforcement officers. Good afternoon to my prison officers. And good afternoon to the inmates who will be hearing this via our television and radio station. Taken from the flow of trend of thought from the minister, as a commissioner of prisons with 33 years service, I can say to you, persons in our custody, most of them come from a broken home, broken value system, and it continues whilst they're in prison. While prison can imprison the body, we are yet to imprison their mind from continuing their criminal behavior and networking. I will use the analogy of fish in an aquarium. And when you throw food for them, or they get hysterical and attack the food. That food is the drugs in society, and I dare say in the prison service. When drugs enter our prison service, it causes mayhem, among the inmates. When cell phones enter the prison system, it causes mayhem. There's a small argument that cell phones provide family bonding and for inmates to contact their families. A small argument, because we do have legitimate phones that inmates can use. We do have legitimate opportunities for visit between inmates and their family, virtual and physical. The larger benefit of the phones in the system is for criminals to continue their criminal trade, their extortion. And as I say extortion, there are persons in our society who communicate illegally with the inmates. Could be for a story, go on the news, and yes, some attorneys do it too. I caution members of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, do not engage in any sort of illegal transaction with inmates within the system. There are proper channels of communication. And why am I saying this? We have inmates extorting citizens for various means. And it goes high to officers, the attorneys. So even if you started off something very legitimate and lawful with inmates within the system, we have complaints from attorneys now that criminal elements within the system are attempting to extort them, blackmail, threatening their lives, to do certain things for them. And that's just an example of getting into illegal transaction with the inmates. When a new committal, an inmate comes in prison for the first time, totally naive about the prison system, he is quickly befriended with the seasoned criminals, given an illegal phone, and say, contact your family, go ahead. The inmate would contact his family, all his family members, and explain what they bring for them. That's where the extortion starts. And now the criminal elements have their phone numbers. They would call them and persuade them to bring money for them through various channels. And if they don't, they will hurt their loved ones in prison. And that's where the extortion lies. So if you do not get into any transaction with the criminal elements in prison and do any illegal communication, it would not transgress to that. Now the question arises, how are these illegal phones or drugs getting into the prison? It has been said, and it is easy to say, that it's rogue prison officers. Yes, we have some of them. For the past 2 years, we have arrested 18 officers in attempts to traffic drugs or contraband into the prison. Since my ascending to acting in this position, the 24th of February, we have arrested 2 officers and another 2 perhaps by the end of the week. So we have stepped up our surveillance. We are working closely with the police service, and the minister is giving us his support as regards to the tools of the trade, his encouragement and his motivation. Just to give you statistics, what has been done, or what has been done since the 24th of February 2022, 291 searches have been taken place in the prison. We had 64 at Port of Spain, 57 at MSP, 18 at ECRC, 39 at Golden Grove, YTC, YTRC at 29, CCP 46, a women prison 38. We had some massive station searches that caused some disturbance in Port of Spain prison, where people were wondering what was happening at the prison, if it's a riot or not. We had 2 such searches at MSP, 2 at the remand, 2 at Port of Spain prison, and this is just from February to now. 1 at women prison, 2 at Golden Grove, and 4 at the WJB, also known as Building 13. Contraband items comes in through rogue officers concealing their person. Yes, we search and we search and we search, but the criminal minded as they are, they find a way to elude us. Visitors come into the institution. We have private contractors working into the institution. We have to search them every time they enter the prison, and there are times we find contraband coming into the system. We have inmates coming back from clinics, hospitals, court, programs, external prison activities. Yes, we search, we find some, and sometimes they elude us. Almost 3 times for the week, persons are attempting to throw items over the Port of Spain prison walls. We have a very vigilant system. We pick it up, yes, but who knows when they get through. We have broken the back of a networking with our garbage truck and items coming in through the garbage truck. Drones. We have put in a system in place that curtailing the drones activity. There are boats at Carrera Island, pass through the night and drop off stuff in the water and comes onto the island. We have to do regular searches, checks and balance to reduce these contraband. There's only so much we can do, and as the minister indicated, we need the citizens to come on board and assist us. If you know, to my fellow officers, if you know an officer is trafficking, let us know. There's a school of thought many years ago that you should approach that officer if he's your friend and tell him to stop. When he doesn't listen to you, bring it to the authorities. I am asking, the warning time is over. Come to us, let us know when your colleague is doing something wrong in the prison. Just this week, last week, Thursday, an officer would have attempted to bring in, well, he brought it in, but we apprehended it, 3,500 cigarettes. Over 2 pounds of marijuana. Several cell phones. That is an investigation, very active right now, and that's what I mentioned earlier on. 2 arrests is imminent. The value system that broke down, that has caused persons to become in the prison system, and yes, to be employed in the prison service in a very small scale, is what contributes to this problem of crime in Trinidad and Tobago. We have a canteen system in the prison that inmates who can afford can purchase similar products what they get in the grocery. There are mothers, grandmothers, aunts, seldom men do this. The women folk take their last bit of money, their pension money, and they go to the canteen and purchase almost all the money that they will gather for their loved one in the prison. And these young men use these commodities to engage in, it's currency in the prison, it's currency, so they purchase the drugs and the cell phone and so on, and fool their loved one that I really need this for my health. Now I don't want to paint a broad brush, I'm giving you the negative side of it. The canteen is functional, not all inmates engage in that, not all inmates' family are fooled. I'm speaking about the negatives. This is what we have to fix. And I'm putting out there citizens, if we maintain the proper value system, as small as it is, it will go a long way in having that machinery of creating more persons to enter the prison system. We have been receiving tremendous police support in intelligence work and apprehension. Prison and police are united unit. Rehabilitation is something will be strong on the agenda under my stewardship. While we keep you under control and security-wise, we must create opportunities for the inmates to engage in active work, develop a sense of remorse, and hopefully change their criminal ways when they reintegrate in society. The ministry is working with the prison actively in looking at a pre-release program where inmates who have been rehabilitated will be considered for some sort of a release. That's an activity actively being pursued. I want to end off in saying that I want to appreciate the support that the Minister has been giving to the prison service, and I can speak of from the 24th of February till today. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner, I think it is important that you would, if you may, you mentioned that you recovered 3,500 cigarettes.
Yes.
What is the real value of that in the prison context, and how, I think the public ought to know?
One cigarette, well, it varies in the market. When we do searches, the price increases. When there's abundance of it in the system, the value drops. One cigarette can reach a price of $100 to $200. So if we add, let's take the medium 150 to the amount of cigarette and marijuana, it's almost $500,000 we're talking about in one haul, and we apprehended that. Is that the tip of the iceberg? It's a big money business. Drugs is an industry. Cell phone in the prison is an industry. Every cell phone that is purchased, there's an owner. Someone produces an identification card and obtains a cell phone or a SIM card. These inmates are being facilitated by citizens of this country. Whether it comes in through through an officer, a drone, or thrown in the estate, or thrown over the wall in Port of Spain prison, it is citizens who are outside the outer prison facilitating that problem. There is so much we can do, but we need the citizenry to come on board. So,
thank you very much, Commissioner. And then I would like to invite Mr. Jacob, who leads the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, to share with you the action or actions that the police have been undertaking in response to this crime crisis, as some of the citizens have quite justifiably perhaps recorded it. Mr. Jacob and your team.
Good afternoon to all. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of National Security, Mr. Fitzgerald Hines. Today, I have the ECP, Joan Archie, who's in charge of operations, with me here, who will basically explain operations that is actually taking place to deal with the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago. And I also have with me Superintendent Singh, who is the second in command at the Homicide Department, who will in fact be explaining what is happening with aspects of the murders and why it is necessary that we deal with probable cause in dealing with our murders and looking at the whole aspect of detection. When I addressed the public on the last occasion, I placed a lot of emphasis on dealing with the whole aspect of crime control and looking at the prevention aspect of it. And in looking at the prevention aspect, I mentioned all the different initiatives that we were putting in place to ensure that we have a high level of police presence. I spoke about our patrol initiative and the increase in the number of vehicles that we received and additional vehicles that we will be receiving at the end of this week, in order that we can have that level of police presence, and also to have our response time improved in relation to matters, and to create that deterrent that is necessary out there. Yes, there is need for us to do it. In fact, we need to continue having that presence out there, and because of what is happening with COVID-19, and for each week we have approximately around 70 or 80 officers who will be on quarantine. In order to be consistent with that approach, we have decided to bring out 60 police officers who are on vacation leave for a 4 months period to support it with that drive. I wish to thank the Minister of National Security for giving us the support with that initiative. Very important. But there is something that we learned over the Easter holiday weekend. Over that weekend, we took all our officers from the offices, all available vehicles, and we had patrols and police presence throughout Trinidad and Tobago. No one can doubt that. In fact, persons were complaining about the number of police on the road doing road checks. And what happened over that weekend? We still had, from Friday to Monday, we still had 15 murders. And we went on to explain and analyze and try to indicate to the general public, this type of murders that we were having. Superintendent Singh will do some explanation of that very soon. It demonstrates to us that other than having high police presence out there, it is also necessary for us to do other things. And that is to deal with the other side of crime control. And that is dealing with detection. Definitely. Because we recognize that some of the criminals are intent on continuing their activities. And we call it adaptation. They adapt to situations. They look at how the police are operating with our patrols, and they still carry out the acts. So therefore, it is totally necessary for us to get them out of the system by lawful means. But what we are happy about is that our ballistic center that we set up in the latter part of last year is helping us tremendously. In fact, 7 of the murders that we solved this year so far, ballistics played a very, very important part. And you all will recognize that recently, in incidents that we had, it was also ballistics that assisted in some instances, letting us know what really took place, helping us. So our ballistic center is one of the key that will help us propel our detection rate and take some of these offenders from off the street. In the latter part of the year also, we get our DNA lab going at the Forensic Science Center. And that is also beneficial to us. In fact, we were able to exonerate persons by use of the DNA, and in some instances identify bodies that were found at a certain where it was decomposed through the DNA. And the DNA, as we utilize it, will also assist us now as we go further in detecting some of these crimes. No longer we'll need to take the DNA abroad and wait for months to get results at a high cost. Thanks again to the Director of the Forensic Science Center, the Minister of National Security, because this was an initiative that we were working on since with the former Minister of National Security. 60% of our general serious crimes so far this year, CCTV footage have been assisting us in that regard. I know we are on the verge of developing a whole CCTV network throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and definitely on the next occasion I might be able to say a higher percentage. And I'm talking about robberies, I'm not just talking about murders, I'm talking about robberies and a lot of other offenses. And it is even giving us a lot of information in relation to evidence, in fact, in relation to road traffic accidents, including fatal accidents for our investigation. But one of the things that we did not forget and will never forget is what we say is the traditional the science of fingerprint. We have upgraded our approach in relation to the fingerprint by the purchasing of 40 new AFIS machines, automated fingerprinting identification machines. And so far this year, it has assisted us in solving 115 serious crimes. And it contributed to the solving of 9 of our murders and about 36 of the robberies. So I want to give thanks to the fingerprint experts, because we tend to forget that science, which is very, very important when we start to talk about DNA and ballistics, but it has been assisting us tremendously. I also want to give thanks to our cyber crime officers, because the cyber aspect have been playing a very, very important role in assisting us in solving crimes. We intend to enhance these approaches, but on the other side, even though we do all these things and we don't have proper case management, is another story. So we have established case management centers in each police division. Recently, we brought back 2 retired assistant commissioners of police to assist for a 6-month period in organizing our case management system to be in congruence with the new changes taking place in the criminal justice system. So they are with us for the next 6 months to assist in that approach. What we have done, and you all will realize that in some instances where we are solving a lot of crimes, and also some investigations are being completed in a speedy manner, we have taken the team approach to our investigation. Meaning to say, no longer we are assigning one investigator. Yes, we will have one primary investigator, but we are now giving that investigator a certain team of persons to assist them, and it is also working well. But we come straight back to the establishment of our operational centers in each police division, that where the CCTVs footage can be seen from these operational centers, and that is also assisting us tremendously. These operational centers operate as the epicenter for the operations for each police division. There are 2 police divisions that is outstanding, and we are saying at least by August for the latest, those 2 other divisions should be fitted with operational centers. Therefore, we can maximize the use of the technology to deal with our crime fighting initiative. As the Superintendent Singh will explain to you all, and I'm going to mention some support that we are getting from the outside, and you will understand why. We had coming on board the Community Conflict Resolution Center at St. Joseph, which is right now overwhelmed with work in relation to mediation and to deal with conflicts. Mr. Singh will explain why when he'll deal with the murders. The University of the West Indies have now joined in, and we have completed training of 36 officers in the whole area of mediation and conflict resolution, and some of them is supporting this venture at the St. Joseph Old Police Station. We also have the Community Justice Clinic, where I think is approximately around 16 attorneys, starting off at 6. I think there are 16 or 26 now attorneys that we have who have joined in with the police to go to all the various communities at least once or twice a month and have programs in relation to how to deal with basic problems that exist in the communities, from the aspect of land disputes to neighbor disputes, and they are helping out tremendously. Recently we supported the vision and mission in relation to a new project that they are having. ACP Archie will explain, because she is also on the board of vision and mission concerning that program, and you all will understand why we are supporting it. Last week I had meetings with the Minister of Social Development and Family Services, Ms. Donna Cox, and had talks with the Minister of Education and others with this whole aspect of how we can deal with the situation existing in Trinidad and Tobago, for us to join together to operate an all government approach, all team approach to deal with some of our situations in Trinidad and Tobago. So again, I leave one for last. And what I left for last is our firearm retrieval initiative that was launched at the beginning of this year. And we have received very, very good dividends from that joint operations together with the Defense Force, the Prison Service, the Police Service, and Customs and other agencies. And I will get the opportunity to demonstrate to you by a presentation some of the firearms that we in fact seized so far for the year, and not just firearms, about ammunition. I will hold it for now and allow Ms. Archie and Ms. Singh, and then I will go into the presentation to demonstrate to you all what is happening in relation to the seizure of firearms with our firearm initiative, which is one of our main initiatives to take firearms from off the streets in Trinidad and Tobago. As you're all aware that 87% of our murders, the firearm is the tool that is being used, and also most of our serious crimes in Trinidad and Tobago. So we have targeted firearms and we are getting successes, and we want to demonstrate to you the type of firearms, the number of rounds, and what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago, and the efforts that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is making. So I will close and then I will come back to that presentation, because in it there will also be items to show you all in which is being actually seized also by the prison service together with the police from the prisons. So I will now hand over to Joanne Archie, who will talk about operations that we are embarking on, continuing embarking on, as we go forward to deal with the crime situation. Joanne Archie.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacob. Pleasant afternoon to everyone, Honorable Minister, and other persons on the head table, members of the media. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we have just rolled out our operational plan for 2022. Our theme, reaffirming our resilience, shared purpose, and value in an era of exponential change. We had 5 priority areas: community partnership, public safety, operational excellence, information and communication and technology, and occupational health and wellness. Very critical in law enforcement. We, despite having to police in a pandemic and police a pandemic, we continue with our anti-crime operations. With these plans, in operationalizing some of these plans, we continued in our relentless pursuit of those bent on disrupting the lives of our law-abiding citizens by our regular anti-crime exercises across all 9 police divisions. We continued to adopt a multi-agency, multifaceted approach, incorporating officers from our Mounted and Canine Branch, Guard and Emergency Branch, our Interagency Task Force, our Coastal and Riverine Unit, our Municipal Police, and our partners under the National Security umbrella, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, Trinidad and Tobago Prisons, Customs and Excise, our immigration officers as well. Since we understand that the approach to crime fighting is multi-pronged, we carefully analyze our crime trends, which tells us how these anti-crime exercises should be conducted, our areas of concentration, and the logistics needed in ensuring that these exercises are performed efficiently and professionally, and that we get the desired results. We also involve our monitoring and evaluation and compliance unit to measure what we are doing, and that what we are doing does not appear to be knee-jerk responses. Of course, given the nature of crime, we have to keep strategizing. We are kept on our toes where this is concerned, since situation can change in seconds. What we aim to do is to continue to support the systematic use of partnerships and problem-solving techniques, our intelligence gathering and analysis, so we can proactively address the immediate conditions that give rise to public safety issues, social disorder, and fear of crime. And of course, we understand that media representations of crime are very influential in shaping public perceptions. So we have reviewed our media strategy as part of our operations and continue to make ourselves more accessible to the media with an effective communication strategy, ensuring that the information communicated is accurate and done so in a timely manner. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in every public space, every alley, every street, every community. And we continue to fight crime together with our members of the community, since we do understand that every crime initiative that we implement, community involvement is critical. So we have embraced the community policing philosophy. And as you hear me speak about partnership, and you also would be familiar with the term, we don't trust the police. So we are dealing with our internal issues, because of course I am one to first admit that we are by no means a perfect organization. So we have reviewed our internal disciplinary strategies and mechanisms in place. And you have been seeing within recent times that we have our police officers charged and placed before the court. And of course, the presumption of innocence, but we have been dealing with issues of misconduct of our police officers. We agree that we cannot do it alone. We need the cooperation of members of the public, and we have made some great strides in that regard. So as we move along, and Mr. Jacob would identify the areas where we were able to have some successes as it relates to our anti-crime operations. We know at times we may inconvenience some of you. However, it's all in the interest of making every place in Trinidad and Tobago safe. So I thank you, and I ask you for your continued support as the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service move forward, again, in ensuring that we enhance the quality of life for all who live all who work and who visit Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you.
Thank you very much, ACP Archie. And I'll now pass on to Superintendent Singh.
Good afternoon, Mr. Minister, commissioners at the table, officials of the Ministry of National Security, members of the media, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Pleasant afternoon to you all. Minister would have alluded to the fact that up to this time, we have 192, perhaps 193 homicides, I'm being told, up to this moment. And in his submissions, he would have spoke to the complexity of issues affecting crime in Trinidad and Tobago generally. In the context of homicides, that reality is manifested in the fact that we have different probable causes which we attribute to each homicide. Honorable Minister would have also pointed to the fact that each homicide should not be treated as just a statistical number, but it is somebody's life. And so we mustn't hide behind figures. And there are certain realities that we must confront as a nation. The complexity, as I said before, of the situation manifesting itself in various probable causes which we align to the motives of the homicide is interesting from the perspective that even when we interface with each investigation, we notice that sometimes the dynamic changes in relation to the motive as the investigation unveils certain facts. And you also see within that there might be multiple probable causes because of the overlap of the nature of probable causes, because I know that the media is very alive to the categorization of homicide into probable causes. And as we see the tiers and levels unveil themselves, you observe what I've alluded to. Currently, out of the 192, we have, of course, as we know, gang activity having the larger percentage, in this case 38%. The issue of drug activity having a large share as well, 17. The offshoot of crime, specifically robbery, having a large percent in relation to 13. What we have observed also is in relation to domestic violence and altercation, they together add up to 15%. But embedded in that are sub-levels of altercations, as Honorable Commissioner would have alluded to, in land disputes, property disputes. And then in the context of domestic violence matters, we have intimate and non-intimate. What we are seeing trending at the moment is the fact that we have familial killings that is inconsistent with our previous realities in terms of husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend type homicides, to have familial killings. We would have known that recently we had a situation where it is alleged that a daughter killed a mother. Then we have situations where parents killing children. We have situations in non-intimate contacts in neighborhood. You find neighborly types of killings. And what these things are pointing out is, in fact, as Commissioner would have pointed out, to the need for conflict resolution in communities. And I would say it this way. So it's public notice that we had a situation not too long ago where somebody whackering in the yard and a neighbor found disfavor with that, resulting in a death. Then we had a situation where somebody whackering again, some shadow benny get cut down, somebody couldn't control their anger a particular way, death. We had a situation where a neighbor would have come over in the night and killed another member of the neighborhood merely because a parent may have discouraged child from keeping an association. And these are some of the current recent developments. And so in understanding that, perhaps one might ask the utility of treating with the issue of putting out their probable causes. The duty of the police primarily is to secure the citizenry. That, of course, is done through specific deterrence where we investigate and charge individuals. But equally, we are the body that is responsible for identifying through our analysis of the crime patterns what type of interventions that we need to structure collectively as organizations, that is to say national security institutions, other NGOs, that will help us to determine what type of remedies we need to make available to the members of the public in an effort to mitigate against future crime trends. So fine, telling you probable cause wouldn't tell you, well, okay, we have solved the crime. But certainly it tells us what we need to do, what is symptomatic of what society is facing. So again, something like a patrol would be an initiative in opportunity reduction. That is to say, where criminals would find the police presence would reduce their opportunities for commission of crime. But when you look at the other components of behavior, crime being behavior, you would see opportunity reduction is one strategy. Change in the way people rationalize and think is certainly one of the other things that we must put together to intervene. So basically, we just wanted to bring these realities out there, recognizing, as the Commissioner of Prisons would have pointed out, and it resonated with me, it's that it's citizens, effectively citizens, that are in fact bringing down onto the public a particular type of behavior. There's nobody else. Nobody is coming into Trinidad and Tobago and perpetrating this volume of crime. Certainly there is the foreign dynamic, but our initial pieces of information is not suggesting that the presence of foreigners in our land is so overwhelming that is the source of all the problems that we have. It is, as the Commissioner of Prisons pointed out, our own. And when you see that sometimes you're not safe in the space where you share intimate relations, it's concerning, you know, and it's expanding even more and more. One of the challenges to my analysis that bothers me a bit is that over the years, our actual detection has increased. For the year already, we have charged more than 30 persons for homicides. More than 30 persons already. But we're not seeing a reduction in crime that is brought about by specific deterrence. And that is concerning because it tells us that we are perhaps so torn and worn as a person, as a group of people, that it's easy for somebody to look at the life of another and say that it's of no value to me, and we perpetrate a particular type of behavior. But also the homicide, every single homicide is a very serious thing. All of our resources go into it. My officers are in fact exhausted, but they continue to be willing. And I want to publicly applaud all the officers attached to the homicide, all the support agencies within the service and external to the service that renders to us the support that we need. We know that we have a lot more work to do, but we are unrelenting in that regard. And I thank you all for all the support that you continue to give to us, and we look forward to a continued partnership. Mr. Commissioner.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Superintendent Singh. And, you know, when you talk about it, and we just look at the probable causes, there are in fact some probable causes that we talk about revenge. And when we think about it, sometimes we only look at the gang-related. But in some instances, it is actually linked to issues that happen between neighbors and neighbors and happen with family members where somebody chooses to take revenge as a result of without going through the proper criminal justice system. So we indicating a lot that that percentage of problems that is happening within our communities and our homes with simple conflict and altercation is significant, and we are saying that that is a part of the whole crime fighting mechanism that we need to get at that, so it will help us tremendously. And also what we have identified, that even in some instances where we talk about home invasion and some persons got killed, we haven't reached the point to charge person yet, but the information is there that some persons are actually hiring persons from gangs to get rid of family members to gain property. And that is the stage that we are at, because they find that the parents living too long. We have those situations occurring. And it tells us something about the stage that we reach in our society and how finances and economics is now placed in front of persons' lives. So again, thank you very much, Superintendent Singh, and I don't, Minister, if you want to intervene before I go to the firearm and ammunition aspect.
Thanks a lot, Commissioner. So that I have gathered from what I have heard that in response to the burgeoning crime crisis, as has been described, I am advised by the Commissioner, and I gather from what I heard this morning from the police and which you heard, that there are some clear strategies that the police have adopted. One of them is to create greater presence, identify hotspots, and to have increased patrols, increased intelligence activity. Well, I'm aware of some of this, and to deal specifically with it as they identify these hotspots. And there are some that they're working on as we speak. That's one of the things I've heard as a response to this. Secondly, which we'll see a little bit more about, we have at the national security level agreed with the police and law enforcement that they are to continue a very robust firearm gun retrieval exercise. In my own view, as a non-police officer, non-law enforcement person, as a citizen with access to some of the information I get, one of the major parts of the issue in this country is the easy availability and access to firearms. Last week, two brothers in Dago Martin had some family dispute, as you would have heard Mr. Singh or Mr. Jacob allude to. And one brother left the home and said, going to come back with a gun. It means that within the time he left, he could easily access a gun. And he came back and he allegedly murdered his brother. And then I read on your newspapers, and then I confirmed it with the police, that the deceased in that incident had previously shot the suspect. So the deceased brother shot with another illegal firearm sometime earlier. How long earlier, Mr. Jacob?
About a year.
About a year before. Shot his brother. But a firearm is easily accessible to them both. So a major gun retrieval exercise is what we have agreed. We are told that there are about 12,000 illegal firearms in this country. From intelligence, the gatherers of intelligence surmise that that is the amount. Some of us feel it might be more. But the idea is to get them. And whether it's a family or enemy or gang, the presence of illegal firearms remains our responsibility, as law enforcement have assured me. And therefore, the project is to get them. And at the same time, to improve our border security. So as Minister of National Security, every one of the heads of national security will be able to truthfully tell you that as soon as a gap, as soon as some strategic assessment is done and we see a flaw and they require resources, I work hard along with my PS and the cabinet to providing those resources. So that we do this in order to secure our borders, because as an island state, illegal weapons continue to come in here. That too is our responsibility. I gather from what I have heard that there are rogue elements in the public, among public officials, including all the agencies of state and state enterprises too. But on this occasion, speaking for national security, we have rogue personnel, and we have been mandated under law, under the Constitution, and by directives from the National Security Council, which I share with law enforcement. We have to find rogue officials and get them out, starting with arresting them and charging them for criminal offenses, as I know has been happening. But there are many more, and there are things to be done. I make no apology for saying that, because I have access to some information which suggests to me that is a major part of the problem. The prison commissioner told you last week they caught a prison officer in allegedly caught, let me say allegedly now, and the matter is under investigation. Charges, he told us, are imminent, with 3,500 cigarettes. And he didn't go into the details, but at $150 for one, as he told us, that is about $525,000. And that is not traded in cash inside of there. It is the fella's aunt. If you smoke 20 of them and you owe $2,000, is your aunt who have to pay a bank account or pay somebody on the outside. And poor lady, if she can't find the 2,000 after you smoke it, then chances are Mr. Jacob and Mr. Singh will get another murder, because you owe the cartel 2,000. So we have to deal as a matter of strategy with rogue officers. I don't hire them, I can't fire them. But we have systems in place. And let me say, part of the problem, as you heard Mr. Jacob and Mr. Singh say, is this question of deterrent. If we had swift justice, it would have served as a greater deterrent. But unfortunately in Trinidad and Tobago, we have not. So since I came to this desk, whenever I encounter any unswiftness, let me put it so colloquially, emanating from national security, whether it is with the prison, whether it is with the Forensic Science Center, whether it is the police, Mr. Jacob, the director of the Forensic Science Center, my PS will tell you, we immediately tackle the issue and aim towards a resolution. So that up till last week, Saturday and Sunday, we had officers of the Forensic Science Center inside of there getting autopsies and ballistic tests done. So to that extent, we fixed that. But national security's contribution to the general criminal justice system is but a small part. We have issues in the court. We have issues in the office of the DPP. And other things. So what we don't have is a very smooth, efficient criminal justice system. And as such, Mr. Jacob lock up somebody, send them by Mr. Ramuta, and with the passage of time and all of that, they wiggle their way out, and we have to face them again. And some are recidivists. They kill again, still pursuing the mighty dollar. So that is where we are. And we have other issues. We have been trying as a government to put in place a property tax in this country. I know there's one among us here and perhaps others who have issues with that. But one of the advantages of a property tax is that it allows those citizens who own property, whether it's building, commercial or residential, whether it is equipment and machinery on which property tax should be paid according to the law that is already in place, is that it gives them as citizens a chance in this democracy to participate in the running of the society and to contribute a fair share of their earnings to buy boat and plane and gun and boots and to equip the police with the training that they need to fight the same crime on behalf of all of us. But there are those who are dead set against the property tax. Not only did they oppose it in the parliament, but they put on the silk, some of them who take it for themselves too, and go to court to make every effort to stop people. And the public is saying, because I told you I listened to the public, we want to pay our property tax as people do in Miami, in New York, everywhere else in the world. To contribute, because businessmen write to me and say, they want to contribute. This is a way. But there are those who are obstructing it. But the great benefit of the property tax is that every single square inch of property in Trinidad and Tobago will be identified, and more than identified, but identified with a specific beneficial owner. Well, owner. And then we have laws to deal with who is the real beneficial owner. So there are those in this country who don't want no property tax because they don't want to be associated with their many properties. They want to keep it secret. But they're calling on me to talk. Mr. Hines must speak up about crime. What is his plan? Well, part of my plan is that. And part of the plan for the government and on behalf of the people is to determine all who own what, because we have laws now to ask people who have ill-gotten gain to account and explain for it. Because some of those underhand dealings, backroom dealings, is what generates some of the murders that we have to trouble, that we face. So as I told you, this is a very, very, very complex thing. But as we identify the problems, we will tackle them. So they focus on police presence, law enforcement presence. And when I read The Guardian, or one of the papers saying about some of the things we have to do, people contact me up to last week. Somebody contacted me and said, Mr. Hines, you all must bring out the soldiers. And I said to myself, wow, the soldiers are out here in the civil society working since perhaps about 2008. Today we have the IATF, the Interagency Task Force, which has Coast Guardsmen and soldiers working along with the police on a daily basis, patrolling up and down Trinidad and Tobago. They are on the road. And whenever there are operations and the commissioner is ready to do them, and I was expecting to hear about some of those operations over the last few weeks, including Saturday morning and the others that you all have been doing, targeted operations. Mr. Jacob told me about some massive operations involving about, how much, 80 police?
Yes.
Last night? Is last night?
Yeah, yes, sir.
So we provide them with the vehicles, we provide them with their sustenance and their support and their salaries, and that is what they have to do to push back this crime crisis that we are talking about here today. So let me give way to Mr. Jacob, because I am quite pleased at the fact that we have retrieved some illegal firearms on an ongoing basis and so far year to date. But if there are 12,000, we have a long way to go. But as I always say, guns are physical things. They are somewhere, and with the dogs and with the will of the 7,000 police officers and 4,000 plus defense force personnel and all of us in law enforcement, I have no doubt that with focus and will we can get them. and at the same time tighten our borders as we have been doing. We purchased 2 recently. The Prime Minister led the charge, and we got 2 brand new vessels, which is having serious impact from the intelligence I get and from the information available to me as a citizen with access to that information. They have been very effective on the sea. And as a matter of fact, Saturday gone, let me just share this with you before I give way to Mr. Jacob. On Saturday, I received the happy news that one of those vessels, supported by our radar system, which you taxpayers pay for and invested great amounts in, it is 100% functional. And it was able to identify what the military people call a target of interest. And having picked up this target of interest, they dispatched one of those vessels after them. But I think it was the customs, because I told you we operate in an interagency platform, and the customs were also notified, and they were closer to the target of interest and pursued it. It made land, by which time the Coast Guard vessel came on the scene, and the elements of the Coast Guard went into the forested area on one of our coastlines, and they found the persons, I think about 8 of them, Mr. Jacob. And then when they checked the vessel, of course, they found contraband items. That was water to my soul, refreshing, because it showed that and when I came here, the radar system was not 100% functional, but I saw to it. And I was very happy to know that this interagency, collaborative, seamless approach, it worked. And it has worked in other cases. I only highlighted one. Recently, there had been reports about bodies found in the heights of Aripo. We acted on that promptly. So I'm just being briefed by Mr. Jacob. As we speak, they're putting up poles, they are doing work in the area to put up some technology to be able to have sight of it on a 24-hour-a-day basis. And as well, I'm assured by the Commissioner that there are regular patrols night and day into that area so as to deal with it, but it is not the only area. So, this is an ongoing work. Mr. Jacob, over to you in terms of the firearms.
Yes, I'm going to the firearm and our firearm initiative, and some of the operations the Minister of National Security was referring to. At least 2 or 3 times per week now we are having some massive operations, joint operations with the Defense Force and other agencies, and joint within the police service and with these other agencies, and at least over a weekend period from Friday to Monday, at times we are recovering at least 15 firearms. We just had one of those operations last night in the Northern Division. I was there last night to brief the persons before they went out on that operations. And earlier the week we had another operations, which is in the papers, in the Central Division, where we were very, very much successful. So what I'm going to show here is the general success. I don't know if they could just dim the lights on this end, please. Well, for the year so far, we have recovered 242 firearms and 5,400 assortments of ammunition. These are some of the firearms that we have recovered so far. And you will see the type of rounds is 5.56, which is for high-powered weapons like these, 7.62 ammunition, and I could give you the numbers in relation to the ammunition. In fact, in 5.52, approximately 1,500 rounds ammunition, 7.62 about 387, and 1,792 9mm. You will see the type of firearms. You will see is a lot of pistols, rifles, and shotguns. The shotguns look like a normal rifle, and so the year so far we have in fact seized approximately around 44 high-powered weapons in Trinidad and Tobago. So as I mentioned, the wrongs that we received is 5,458 assortment of wrongs. And you notice something that is happening. Whenever we get firearms, we are getting something together with it. We are getting drugs. In relation to compressed marijuana, that we have seized something like 188 kilograms, of marijuana so far, and assortment of cocaine. Cannot remember the exact number right now, but significant amount of cocaine also. But whenever we recover arms and ammunition together, you will see drugs alongside it. So it demonstrates us now that with the gangs, they are operating both with the firearms and the drugs. In fact, there are some gangs that are only now carrying out their activities in relation to trading in firearms and ammunition because of the intensive demand for firearms in Trinidad and Tobago. So both is coming hand in hand, both the normal drugs and also the compressed marijuana and the different type of firearms. We are now going into some of the seizures that took place at the prison service. I will call on Mr. Rapta to have some discussion to explain it. You could just slow it up a bit, please. Commissioner. Right, you could run it back a bit so you...
Yes, good day again. These cigarettes took time to parcel, compress, tied up like that, and were brought in by one officer. We have video footage of it that has been analyzed right now. Of course, the person would have had his defense. It came in together with cell phones, and I said that the investigation is very active and the arrest is imminent.
Thank you. So again, as we're saying, this is how they package the cigarette, and it was mentioned the costing of one cigarette. So we are seeing the magnitude of what we are dealing with this trade that is taking place with the prisons, and it spells out on the streets in Trinidad and Tobago, as was mentioned by the prison commissioner. So some of the shootings and things that we are getting is actually because of the sort of processes that is taking place between the prisoners at the prisons. I just want to go back to some of the firearms. Go higher, please, thanks. Yeah, you can replay the whole video again, please. No, go back from the top, please. Okay. All right. No, I just want you all to pay some attention again to the type of high-powered weapons that we are dealing with. This is no homemade firearms. And as we identify, a lot of these firearms are coming from North America, from Georgia, from Baltimore. We are working hand in hand with our agencies, with the DEA. We are also working with the ATF, the FBI, in order to deal with this, to identify the persons who are actually sending down these firearms to Trinidad and Tobago. We have two outstanding cases, and I want to assure the public that within the next month or so, there will be some results in some of the finds that we had with the work that we are presently doing. Right? These are some of the shotguns that we're talking about, the pistols, which is the firearm of choice for most persons because it's so easy and the cost of it is less. We still have the revolver being used. You see in the middle there, and as I said, you see it linked with the whole aspects of drugs. So again, you all are seeing is all different makes and shapes of firearms that are being used on the streets in Trinidad and Tobago. And the issue of the wrongs must be considered with the 5.56 and the 7.62 You know, and these sort of wrongs can create serious damage and injury to property and to persons. So again, we will continue our work with our initiative to remove firearms from off the streets. At this stage is 242 firearms we took off the streets, and 445 persons were charged for various firearm offenses for the year so far. The question of bail, we know several of them received bail even though they were charged for weapons like what we are seeing here. So again, this is our presentation to identify to you, the general public, what we are facing with. You will realize that over the weekend, 2 police officers were shot in the Central Division. You know, where there was in fact some street party, and the officers went to deal with the loud noise, the loud music, and they were fired upon. And 2 other civilians, 2 ladies, were also shot. So again, this is what we are dealing with, and we want your support. We want you to call into the numbers. We want you to call into Crime Stoppers. Call 555. Give us information so that we can remove these deadly weapons from the streets in Trinidad and Tobago, and which is responsible for about 87% of our murders in Trinidad and Tobago, and the number of woundings where they are leaving some persons seriously injured for the rest of their lives as a result of the use of firearms. Yes, we know the drugs is fueling it, and we are also dealing with the drug situation. Right? This is a whole with the cocaine that is being used out there, and that is the manner in which they put it together for sale. So again, this presentation is quite instructive for persons to understand and appreciate what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago and the efforts being made by the men and women of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, supported by the other agencies, especially the Defense Force and the Prison Service, and some of the good citizens in Trinidad and Tobago who provide us with the necessary information. So again, thank you very much, and this is where we at as we make efforts to rid Trinidad and Tobago, the streets of Trinidad and Tobago, from the criminal elements.
Thank you.
Prison.
Run down. Go down.
These items from the prison service were wrapped and prepared by somebody's son, brother, uncle, father. They would have caused tremendous embarrassment to the service. Initially, when I came into office, I asked my officers, I promise them I will motivate you to work. I will do what is necessary to be a good leader. Now it's time, fellow officers, to come on board and let us expose the wrongdoers. Let us expose the traffickers. Let us get rid of them from the service and put them behind the bars of the inmates that they claim to role model. So this is a call to fellow prison officers. Let's come on board, support your leaders, support the government, support the Ministry of National Security, and let us get rid of the crooked ones. And I dare say to other stakeholders, let's not make it too easy for them to get outside and walk freely among us and have a case pending or 2 against their name. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So thank you all again. And thank you all again. And you're aware that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is also making the efforts to cleanse itself. For the year so far, we have around 44 persons who were officers, 21 special reserve officers, 22 police officers who were placed on suspension, and 11 police officers ranging from the rank of constable to ASP were actually charged by the Professional Standards Bureau and is before the court. Right? The allegations were made, we did the investigation, and we reached that stage. Now the rule of law will take its part, right? Persons are presumed innocent, right, until proven guilty, but at present we are doing what is necessary to cleanse the police service of rogue elements. So again, similar to the prison service, we are making all the efforts. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, with those things said, we are open to any questions that you may want to pose to the personnel who is in front of you. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Leo Sorayas from the Trinidad Express newspapers. My questions are for Commissioner Jacob. Commissioner, we would have seen last week a special branch report being leaked to the public. And I just wanted to find out from you if you are concerned about this report being used on our political platform.
You know, it's very distasteful when you see confidential reports like that, which are secret documents appearing in the public. You know, so I'm very, very much concerned about that. And you know, there are certain codes that we operate in law enforcement. And one of the codes, when it comes to secret confidential documents, that when it's deal with national security matters, it is really unbecoming to see that someone will choose to put that out there in the first instant, you know. And intelligence operate within a certain way, and reports are graded. So you may see an intelligence report and you may not even know how the intelligence report is in fact graded, but it is graded at different levels, which will require different response depending on the grading of the intelligence. And I think you recognize that that report that you saw there is from 2019, which was given from the special branch to the former commissioner of police. And that is how it worked from the special branch. And that is where we are now in relation to the release and publicizing of that report that is challenging to all law enforcement, and all law enforcement agencies and officers get very concerned when they see something like that is happening, because it breaks, you know, all the sacred code as it relates to, right, policing and confidentiality.
Okay. Commissioner, can you...
Before you go, permit me to say on that matter, since it involves, to some extent, the government, I have seen reports that this document was supposed to have been as well shared with the Honorable Prime Minister. I cannot speak for the Prime Minister. I will not attempt to speak for the Prime Minister. He's a rather able man. But suffice it to say that there are suggestions about the content of the document. Mr. Jacob would have dealt with the policing aspect and the need for respecting the ethos, the ethic, the dignity of the code. But I can tell you that we are being asked about the content of it. Well, it's because as a minister, and I heard a journalist, a so-called journalist on the radio saying, well, it's a good thing it leaked. Oh yeah, that's fine. Trouble is, as Mr. Jacob just alluded to, there's a serious difference between intelligence and evidence. And that was an intelligence report. It means, therefore, even the IOCA, the Interception of Communications Act, recognizes the distinction between intelligence and evidence. So much so that if criminals or terrorists, having been suspected by the police, and the police want to find out what they're doing in order to protect you from putting a bomb under the grandstand in the Queen's Park Savannah Carnival Sunday night. And they pick up the intelligence and they decide they want to pay attention to particular persons, they can do so under one section of that law, but for intelligence gathering only. That cannot be used in a court of law. If they want to use any material in a court of law, they must now apply to a judge who will then listen to what they have to say and be satisfied as a bit of a refinement. The court looks at it in the context of the law and to see whether the standards of the law are met in order to authorize an interception, and the product of that could be used as evidence. So when a member of parliament, especially those who pretend to have so much problem with interception, led by a woman, anyway, this is a different kind of platform, so let me leave that for the time being. But suffice it to say that when a member of the parliament, a senator, could come and use an intelligence document, however leaked it was, and whoever we know it was issued to, and whoever handed it to her, because we know that too. As my Prime Minister reminded me some time ago in another conversation, in Tobago they say the goat you hear bawling for water is not he was the one who really wanted it, you know. So when you heard that in the metaphor, goat, talking about that, it's not she, you know. Somebody gives she that. And we know why. We know why.
Minister, perhaps you can also answer this question.
So the issue is bifold as far as I'm concerned. One, the issue that is quite properly in front of us, the leaking of a confidential document. And that too will gain the attention of the police. But the content, which is the intention, was to highlight the Prime Minister, the Minister of Youth Development in a certain way. Just wanted to point out all of that. And by the way, if it came from the police, if the special branch, an arm of the police service, shared that with the National Security Council or the Prime Minister, the police already have it, you know. And they know what to do with it. In fact, they do what they have to do with it. So sometimes I heard some old talk about, and what did somebody else do? The police have the information and the police know what to do with all intelligence they get. Convert it into evidence, and when they do that, and we of the government have no problem with that, the chips will fall wherever they may.
Are you aware of
It is quite burdensome that matters of that nature gets itself in the public domain. And I just want to conclude by telling you, as Minister of National Security, I get plenty reports on all manners of things. But we of the government have chosen to come down on the side of integrity and ethics and decency and right thinkingness. Because there's a lot, if we felt like it, we could say, but that is not the way it's done. In fact, I pain at the fact, never in the history of this country have I ever heard before, and I came out of the police service, a matter that was addressed to a particular police officer in the police service, now in the public domain. It is not the way we do the business, but time is longer than twine.
Minister, are you concerned that other documents could have been leaked to the public, and how does this impact national security?
I don't want to speculate about the future, but all I could do is to assure you that this minister will uphold the dignity and the traditions and my oath and the expectations of the other professionals I must work with and the expectation of my Prime Minister. My Prime Minister told us when I joined his team as a senator, an opposition senator in 2010, and told us even more starkly when we went into government in 2015, if you as a minister lie to the public, lie to the parliament, it is a fireable offense. We live by that. We live with that. So last Friday in the parliament, I got up and I spoke about a matter that came to my attention in dealing with the sexual offences bill, where a former minister of government in another government between 2010 and 2015 assaulted a young woman in this country. She came to his office requesting help. He got up, he locked his door, and this is the woman talking to me. He locked his door and then came and fondled her. Allegations we heard otherwise in other places on high. And then took action from what was reported to me by way of blandishments and promises. Now, that kind of behavior you won't find. And when I made these comments in the parliament, I spoke in the presence and hearing of my Prime Minister. If he came to the conclusion that I was making that up and telling a lie, I won't be here today. And I also told the Parliament some time ago, they're talking about leak. I also told the Parliament some time ago, I speaking in the Parliament, told them that I sent 9 deeds of title purchased by a particular individual and his wife in this country, in Philippines, in South Trinidad. And I had my feelings about it, because there was one particular property that was very close to another well-known property that was also bought in those transactions. I related that to the Parliament. And not a single journalist, not one, ever sought to find out more about that. And the person of whom I spoke never one day said one word in response to it. And they wouldn't say a word as I repeat it here today. Not one. Because it's demonstrably the truth. But this matter, I reported to the police, and I can tell you now, it is in the hands of the police, and I don't investigate nothing. It is for them to investigate it.
Commissioner, one more question. Commissioner, could you say whether a crime was committed in the leaking of this document, and if so, what is the charge?
Well, within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, right, other than the, you know, there are written codes, right? But we have within our regulations, if persons communicate and do things like that, they can be dealt with according to our police service regulations, and that is if it is within the police service itself. As it relates to if it's someone outside the police service, we have some issues there. If it's a public servant, there are in fact the rules that exist, you know, but for it among to the criminal aspect is something that, you know, we need to get further advice on. But at this stage, we look at it at that level, you know. But there are some principles in life that is higher than the law, that is constantly being breached within our country, you know. And once something is not, we cannot find a law dealing with it, it is apparently it is okay. But moral principles and things are greater. Laws evolve from morality. Some of the laws that we practice right now come out of morality when you look at the jurisprudence of law. So it starts somewhere, you know. So we have to reach that level that not everything have to be legislated, but there are some codes that we must be able to follow as prudent thinking human beings.